Malice Campaign. This video provides you with an example of a malice campaign which is implemented by a greater narcissist, i.e. they know what they are, they know what they're doing, and they know why they are doing it. Malice campaigns are actually very rare, and if you want to understand the circumstances in which they occur, then you should go to the Knowledge Vault and obtain the low-cost item, Understanding Malice Campaigns. That will actually give you quite a lot of comfort and realise that although you thought you were dealing with a malice campaign, you weren't. What you're more likely to experience is intermittent malign follow-up hoovers, which give you the impression of being a campaign, that give you the impression of having been thought about and orchestrated, but they are not. Take, for example, you wake up each day and find that somebody has thrown a paper bag containing the detritus of a meal from McDonald's into your front garden. Every morning you wake up and there it is. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Always there. And you go out and remove it, looking around to see who might have done it, and there's no sign of the culprit. You might then think, aha, somebody's deliberately doing this. They have decided that each and every day they're going to throw some rubbish into my garden to annoy me. That's a fair assumption. However, you get up earlier and you realise that what's actually happening is that there is a delivery driver who always stops in the lay-by outside of your house to have his breakfast from McDonald's, and once he's finished it, being the lazy, inconsiderate bum that he is, he just opens his window, scrumples up the bag and hurls it into your front garden. He is not doing it because he wants to irritate you. He hasn't sat and thought, I know, I'm going to go to McDonald's and purchase my breakfast, then I'll go and eat it in the lay-by, and I'll throw it into the owners of number 27. No. It is coincidence. But because it keeps happening each and every day, it gives the appearance to you of it being a campaign of orchestrated behaviour, but it's not. All he does is, he always stops at that time on his route, which means he always stops outside of your house. And therefore, he stops and always eats there, and because he can't find a bin and he doesn't want to clutter up his cab in his lorry, he chucks it out of the window and it always lands in your garden. And because he has the same route every day at the same time, you always wake up to find that the litter is there. And that is similar to how certain behaviours of the narcissist operate. Most narcissists don't plan ahead. I know that many of you have a difficulty in understanding that, and you should go to the material in the Knowledge Vault about, is it planned with regard to inside the narcissist's head? And is it a manipulation? And that will give you more insight. Most narcissists don't plan, only greaters and ultra do, and we're extremely rare. Less from mid-range, it's a hand-to-mouth arrangement. And although it might give the appearance of a systematic campaign of behaviour against you, it isn't. It's a series of individual events which are unconnected, but you connect them as a consequence of looking at them over a period of time and your lack of understanding about those particular narcissists. It's similar with smearing. Most smearing is not actually part of a campaign, but instead they are one-off responses of the narcissist by asserting control through the second assertion of control. And each time you threaten the narcissist's control, there is a response through the three assertions of control, and it might be for a variety of reasons. The narcissism is always selecting smearing. The narcissist has not sat down and thought, I'm going to make this person's life hell by orchestrating on a planned and consciously calculated campaign against them. I'll smear them to these people, I'll put some notices out, I'll launch a campaign on the internet. No. It's ad hoc. Control is threatened, the narcissist responds by smearing. A week later, control is threatened again, the narcissist responds by smearing. 2 days later, control is threatened, the narcissist responds by smearing. They are unrelated, unconnected, ad hoc events, but again, as a consequence of the impact of emotional thinking, wanting you to fear that it's an orchestrated campaign, and as a consequence of your lack of understanding about narcissism, you regard it as a campaign. So that's similar with regard to the malice campaign, and there are certain set conditions where they arise, and as I mentioned, the material understanding the Malice Campaign goes into further detail about that. Here is an example of a series of malign hoovers which are part of a thought-out and orchestrated malice campaign against the victim. The greater narcissist, in order to assert control, gain fuel, and because of the malice that is evident, decided that they would embark upon this repeated and sustained course of conduct, which you'll hear about in the description. They planned it beforehand. They knew what they were going to do. They knew the time period over which they would be doing it. And they're doing it for the reasons that are set out in the criteria for a malice campaign. Here is the description. For the 42nd day in a row, you arrive at work and find that there is an offensive voicemail waiting for you. You left without paying, and you'll soon do so, you fucking bitch. Nobody leaves without paying. Understand? You replace the handset and feel the sick sensation rising inside you again. Why does this keep happening? You don't actually recognize the voice. In fact, it sounds somehow synthesized or distorted, no doubt to mask who it actually is. Notwithstanding, you know who this message came from, even though you don't recognize the voice. All 42 messages have landed in that similar, synthesized voice. The messages are always left on your work voicemail, never anywhere else. They are left at different times, always different times, but at some point between the hours of 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. Accordingly, you are never at your desk when the message comes in. You would deactivate your voicemail, but you need it, and of course, the greater narcissist knows this. That is why the messages are always being left there. You've changed your work telephone number 3 times, and you really don't want to ask the infrastructure team to have to do it again. You saw the eye rolling last time. It's not as if they can't believe you've played the messages to them, but you know what they are thinking. Deal with it. It's just some crank who'll tire of it soon enough. Well, 6 weeks have passed, and there is no sign of abatement, no sniff of fatigue. The messages are as savage and as vitriolic as always. You changed the number, but the messages still came through. Someone here must obviously be telling the individual about the changes. Who could it be? Who is leaking your number? Is it someone in the infrastructure team? Your secretary? Another colleague? So many potential suspects. But then, you always did wonder why this individual took such an interest in meeting so many people from where you worked. It could be anybody out of 20 people who could be disloyal, and you can't go around accusing them without some concrete evidence. Again, the greater narcissist knows this and exploits this. You try to ignore the messages, but after 14 days of it, with the messages making threats about retribution and revenge, you confronted them. There was never anything explicitly stated by way of a threat. It was always the manner in which it was said that you knew that there was a threat contained within it, the capability of what the individual would do. You eventually confronted the suspected individual, who issued a denial and said that they wouldn't do anything like that. They looked shocked and concerned, but then they would, since you took a witness with them, and the facade needed to be maintained. Of course, the narcissist still enjoyed the fuel from you turning up and stating your case. The narcissist tried to get you to come in so that he could get you to discuss it further. But you must have been alerted to that particular Hoover as you stood firm. However, this greater narcissist knows there is plenty of time yet. There is always time. The messages tend to stick to a theme of you being punished and telling you that you have done wrong. And that is what makes you think that it is the individual concerned. You hoped that your pleas on the 14th day went heeded by the person that you spoke to, the greater narcissist, and even though he had denied it, you at least demonstrated that you were onto him. The next morning, despite this attendance, you saw the red light flashing on your telephone, indicating that you had a voicemail message from overnight. You toyed with getting someone else to listen, but then thought it might be something else, so you decided to dial a code and listened. Think you can stop the punishment, do you? Never. You have sinned, and you will atone. You sat down and began to cry, as the words, each one stated in a staccato style, had their effect. By the 23rd day, you had involved infrastructure in trying to trace where the call was coming from, but they drew a blank. By the 37th day, you had opted to call in Her Majesty's Finest to solve the problem. You had saved all the messages and handed over the audio file of this disembodied voice. You somehow managed to persuade the police to visit the narcissist, and of course, he was at his most cooperative and charming. He even let them look through his call list on his cell phone, and that contained no evidence. The narcissist even produced evidence that demonstrated that he could not have made those calls, even if he'd wanted to, on several of the nights in question. The alibis were convincing, and convinced the police that they were barking up the wrong tree. Of course they were. It would do the greater narcissist a disservice if you think that he would get his hands dirty with this particular campaign. He has others to do this for him, to avoid detection, and still to get to gather the fuel, as he pictures your frightened and shocked reaction, as he still manages to penetrate the attempts to evade him. You are wondering when it will end. Surely he will not keep this up forever. Surely he will move on to someone else and be preoccupied with them. The narcissist, of course, has that new IPPS and regards them as far better than this former IPPS. But because he's greater and he's instituted a Malice Campaign, he views it as necessary to torment and torture the former IPPS for their treachery and their deceit. In his world, this person deserves to be punished. The victim hopes that it will end soon. Hope is no good. It will end when the greater narcissist decides that it should. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.